Highly favored one of the Lord, I appreciate you joining me on the Healing Streams Reflection. The title for today's post is, What Type of Death Did Christ Die for Sinful Man? What type of death did Christ die for sinful man? Beloved, we cannot fully appreciate what Christ did for us on the cross until we sit down to study closely the type of death he went through for us. When the type of death Christ went through is viewed against his own background as God and King, and against our own background as sinners who deserved just punishment, then we see better the great thing that Christ has done for us in coming to take our punishment and setting us free. The death of Christ was disgraceful and humiliating because he had to take on himself the nature of man, though he was God. Because Philippians chapter 2, 7-8 informs us clearly that indeed Jesus Christ made himself of no reputation, taking the form of a bondservant and coming in the likeness of man. And being found in appearance as a man, he humbled himself and became obedient to the point of death, even the death on the cross. Even the writer of Hebrews even supported this assertion of what the Apostle Paul wrote in Philippians. In Hebrews chapter 2, verse 9, he also affirmed that, but we see Jesus, who was made a little lower than the angels, for the suffering of death, crowned with glory and honor, that he, by the grace of God, might taste death for everyone. Beloved, even to the point of death, he humbled himself. He also allowed himself to be born of the flesh, true though he was God. Isaiah 9 verse 6 tells us that, as well as Luke chapter 2 verse 11-14. He had to become a servant though he was a great king, even to the extent that at a certain point with his disciples, in John chapter 13, the Bible tells us categorically clear, especially verse 5, that after that he poured water into a basin and began to wash the disciples' feet and to wipe them with the towel with which he was girded. And then in verse 14 of John chapter 13, he said, if I then, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also ought to wash one another's feet. Beloved, this is a king who took him upon himself. A great king, but he took upon himself and became a servant. And also he had to agree to die like a criminal and a cursed person. Because the Apostle Paul tells us categorically clear in Galatians chapter 3 verse 13 that Christ has redeemed us from the curse of the law, having become a curse for us. For it is written, curse is everyone who hangs on a tree. Beloved, the death of Christ was painful and full of suffering, even to the extent that Christ himself foretold his suffering, especially when he was with the disciples in Caesarea. Because it's Matthew chapter 16 verse 21. The Bible says, from that time Jesus began to show to his disciples that he must go to Jerusalem and suffer many things from the elders and chief priests and scribes, and be killed and be raised the third day. Beloved, indeed, we are serving a God in which whatever he says always come to pass. Therefore, in Matthew chapter 20, verse 17 to 19, the Bible says, now Jesus, going up to Jerusalem, took the 12 aside on the road and said to them, behold, we are going up to Jerusalem, and the Son of Man will be betrayed to the chief priests and to the scribes, and they will condemn him to death and deliver him to the Gentiles to mock and to scourge and to crucify. And the third day he will rise again. Beloved, indeed, in his preparation to go to the cross, Matthew chapter 26, verse 38, all the way to 45, informs us how he suffered in Gethsemane. Because the Bible tells us that then he said to them, my soul is exceedingly sorrowful, even to death. Stay here and watch with me. He went a little further and fell on his face and prayed, saying, oh, my Father, if it is possible, let this cup pass from me. Nevertheless, not as I will, but as you will. Then he came to his disciples and found them sleeping, and said to Peter, what? Could you not watch with me 1 hour? Watch and pray, lest you enter into temptation. The spirit indeed is willing, but the flesh is weak. Again, a second time, he went away and prayed, saying, oh, my Father, if this cup cannot pass away from me unless I drink it, your will be done. And he came and found them asleep again, for their eyes were heavy. Verse 44 of Matthew chapter 26. So he left them and went away again and prayed the third time, saying the same words. Then he came to his disciples and said to them, are you still sleeping and resting? Behold, the hour is at hand, and the Son of Man is being betrayed into the hands of the sinners. Beloved, oh yes, we thought that was the end of the suffering, but Christ suffered again in Pilate's judgment hall. In Mark chapter 15, verse 15 to 20, the Bible says, so Pilate, wanting to gratify the crowd, released Barabbas to them, and he delivered Jesus after he had scourged him to be crucified. Then the soldiers led him away into the hall called Praetorium, and they called together the whole garrison, and they clothed him with purple. They twisted the crown of thorns, put it on his head, and began to salute him. Hail, King of the Jews! Hail, King of the Jews! Then they struck him on the head with a reed and spit on him, and bowing the knee, they worshiped him. And when they had mocked him, they took the purple of him, put his own clothes on him, and led him out to crucify him. Beloved, as if that is the end, Christ once more suffered at his painful crucifixion. And so Luke writes in Luke chapter 23, verse 33 to 46, Luke lamented that, and when they had come to the place called Calvary, there they crucified him and the criminals, one on the right hand and the other on the left. Then Jesus said, Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they do. And they divided his garment and cast lot. And the people stood looking on. But even the rulers with them sneered, saying, he saved others. Let him save himself. If he is the Christ, the true Son of God. The soldiers also mocked him, coming and offering him sour wine, and saying, if you are the King of the Jews, save yourself. And an inscription also was written over him in letters of Greek, Latin, and Hebrew, this is the King of the Jews. This is the King of the Jews. This is the King. Then one of the criminals who were hung blasphemed him, saying, if you are the Christ, save yourself and us. But the other answered and rebuked him, saying, do you not even fear God, seeing you are under the same condemnation? And we indeed justly, for we receive the due punishment of our deeds. But this man has done nothing. Then he said to Jesus, Lord, remember me when you come into your kingdom. And Jesus said to him, assuredly I say to you, today you'll be with me in paradise. Now it was about the 6th hour, and there was darkness over all the earth until the 9th hour. Then the sun was darkened, and the veil of the temple was torn into two. Then when Jesus had cried out with a loud voice, he said, Father, into your hands I commit my spirit. Having said this, he breathed his last. Beloved, yes, his death was painful and full of suffering. But do you know something else? The death of Christ was vicarious. He went through it for our sake, for you and I, for our benefit. Christ's death was for our benefit, not his. Even Isaiah 53, 4-12 tells us as such. And John 6:51. And 1 Peter 2:24. Peter, who was a witness, even testified to that. The death of Christ was voluntarily. Nobody forced Christ to the cross. He did all what he did voluntarily for us because he saw that we were helpless. Even Isaiah chapter 50, verse 6 informs us that nobody forced him to the cross. Oh yes, nobody forced him to the cross. And so in Isaiah 50 verse 6, Isaiah declared, I gave my back to those who struck me, and my cheeks to those who plucked out the beard. I did not hide my face from shame and spitting. Luke 9:51 also informs us that indeed his death was voluntarily. And he even testified to that. Now it came to pass when the time had come for him to be received that he steadfastly set his face to go to Jerusalem. He himself, nobody. Beloved, what can we also offer Christ in appreciation of what he did for us in his death on the cross? Think about that and think through it in this season of Easter celebration. Have a wonderful seasonal celebration and bye for now.